I always believed that family was everything, especially since my uncle and I had been inseparable since childhood. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wafted through the air as we sat in the small office we had rented together. It was a cramped space with peeling paint and a small window that overlooked the bustling street below. I could hear the sounds of traffic and people chatting. It was exciting and reminded me that our dreams were about to come to life. "Can you believe it?" I had said to him, excitement bubbling in my chest. "We are finally doing this, just like we talked about when we were kids." He looked at me with a warmth that made me feel safe, the sort of warmth that only a family member could provide. We both had big ambitions. At 28, I was ready to spread my wings. I had poured my entire savings of $50,000 into our startup, convinced that this was the magical opportunity that would change our lives. I wanted to build something magnificent, something that would leave a mark on the world. Each dollar I put in felt like an investment not just in the business, but in our future together. Late nights turned into early mornings as I spent countless hours researching, developing a business plan, and dreaming of success while my phone buzzed with messages from friends asking me out to dinner or to hang out. I sacrificed so much, thinking about the wealth we would generate and looking forward to those long-awaited vacations we always talked about. However, as time went on, I started noticing his behavior shift. It was subtle at first. Little things like how often he arrived late to our meetings and how he seemed distracted, a glimmer of worry shadowing his eyes. "Are you okay? You seem a bit off," I asked one afternoon as we sat over paper-strewn tables, discussing our marketing strategies. He waved off my concern with a chuckle, but it felt forced, lacking the energy that normally lit up his face. "Just a little pressure, that's all," he replied, a shadow passing over his expression. I wanted to believe him, but the nagging feeling in the back of my head told me there was more underneath the surface. Weeks turned into months, and I noticed him spending recklessly. I would see new clothes he'd wear during our meetings, sleek dress shirts and polished shoes that looked like they cost a fortune. "Where did you get that shirt? Looks designer," I had asked one day, trying to mask my concern with playful curiosity. "Oh, I had a great deal on it. You know how it is, right?" He had replied with that same half-smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. My stomach twisted as I felt the unease grow, but out of love and loyalty to our bond, I brushed it off, believing trust was more potent than anything else. One evening, while organizing a stack of receipts, I found myself staring at our financial statements. The numbers were off, way off. My heart raced as I pushed aside mingled thoughts, telling myself it could be a misunderstanding. But the sickening sensation in my stomach told me otherwise. Anxiety snaked its way through my mind as I sat on the edge of my chair, staring at the paper, the bright white contrasting with the growing darkness of doubt. Suddenly, I felt the oppressive weight of betrayal, but I shook my head, forcing myself to focus. "Get a grip," I whispered to myself. "You are just being paranoid." So, I gathered my courage and approached him one day when he came in later than usual, smelling of expensive cologne and wearing a new watch that gleamed under the fluorescent office lights. "Listen, we need to talk about the budget. I noticed some discrepancies. I'm worried we might be overextending ourselves." I tried to keep my tone steady, but I knew the crackle of tension was obvious. He raised an eyebrow, something flickering in his gaze, but he leaned back casually in his chair. "Discrepancies? What do you mean? We're doing great. Sales are picking up, and those initial struggles are just hurdles. You're worrying for nothing." His voice was smooth like syrup, coating the conversation in a sickening sheen, offering me nothing to hold on to. "I just want to understand where the money is going. If we are going to succeed, we need to be transparent." I pressed him, my heart pounding wildly. "I've invested everything I have. We can't afford to take risks." He sighed, a long exhale that felt dismissive. "You're too uptight. Honestly, Mia, you need to learn to loosen up. Everything is fine, trust me." But I could see the slight tremor in his hands, and for the first time, my instincts screamed that something was unbelievably wrong. And yet, I believed him. After all, he was family. He was the person whom I had supported through thick and thin, the one who once told me, "We got each other's backs." With every ounce of my being, I wanted to convince myself that trust was more potent than suspicion, but my heart sank every time doubt clouded my mind. Days became weeks, and every morning I would sit at our shared desk, waiting for him to show up, my chest a tight knot of anticipation. I would thumb through our financial reports, trying to peer through the fog of uncertainty. His increasing distance felt like a chasm widening between us. Instead of his usual lively banter, our talks turned sparse, filled only with necessary work jargon. Yet I could sense an invisible wall was rising, and the warmth I once felt around him turned into an icy chill. One fateful afternoon, he came in late again, his face flushed as if he had been running. Dark clouds brewed quickly outside the window as stormy winds began to swift through the air. "Sorry, got caught up with some things," he muttered, but I could see the panic flashing behind his friendly smile. "What's wrong?" I pressed, frowning as I watched him shuffle through papers on his desk, almost like he were looking for something to distract himself. "Nothing you need to worry about," he said tersely, avoiding my gaze entirely. I felt my heart sink deeper into doubt, the air growing thick with unspoken tension. "What are you not telling me?" I asked, my voice rising with emotion, colored with urgency. "I have a right to know. We are partners, remember?" He finally looked up, but his eyes were stormy and haunted. "You don't understand the pressure I am under. Stop poking your nose where it doesn't belong." His voice broke like glass, a sharp edge that threw me off guard. I recoiled from the intensity of his gaze, the weight of his words crashing over me, wrapping around my chest like chains. "This isn't just about you anymore, Mia." "Then what is it about?" The words escaped my lips before I could hold them back. The floodgates of frustration erupted, and sadness overwhelmed me. I had loved him like a brother, and now I was standing at the precipice of what felt like betrayal. "We're supposed to build this together. Stop being dramatic. This is just business." He snorted, looking away as if the mere mention of "together" sickened him. My heart shattered at the coldness that seeped into his tone, a stark contrast to the warmth we once shared like a heartbeat echoing through our lives. "I put everything into this, my whole life," I shouted, emotion creeping into my voice, feeling like it was vibrating off the walls. "I didn't just invest money, I sacrificed everything for you." The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating as the thunder rumbled outside. He froze, eyes narrowing as if my admission had struck a chord he wished to silence. I could almost see the gears turning in his mind, calculating the risks of exposure, weighing the value of our bond against whatever schemes he had brewing. "Listen, Mia, you need to trust me. You've got to let this go," he insisted in a low voice, but I detected the sharp edge of defiance. My instincts screamed at me. Anger coursed through my veins, a burning sensation igniting my blood as realization dawned. "What have you done?" I whispered, horrified at the thought of what lay beneath our fragile trust. I felt raw and exposed, standing on the edge of betrayal and loyalty as the storm outside mirrored the tempest raging within me. "Nothing that concerns you," he retorted, but the sharpness in his voice was edged with desperation. The thunder clapped louder, and without a second thought, I turned my back on him. The icy chill of betrayal settled deep in my bones, and suddenly the future I imagined crumbled around me like a house of cards. My heart ached as I stared into the distance and took a deep breath, feeling the cracks in our partnership widen, each breath carrying the weight of memories painted in bright colors now dimmed by betrayal. I could not imagine my uncle would turn against me. I just could not. My worst fears came true one evening as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the cramped office where I spent countless hours. The flickering fluorescent light buzzed overhead, a background hum to the chaos of paperwork that surrounded me. Papers were strewn carelessly across my desk, and the clutter felt overwhelming, but the necessity to sort through everything felt more pressing than ever. I needed to bring order to the chaos, not just for my sanity, but for the future of our family business. Organizing files had always been a way to ground myself, to face reality, and to do something proactive. But that night, reality came crashing down around me. As my fingers rifled through the familiar stack of invoices and receipts, I felt a strange tension building in the pit of my stomach. It was as if some unseen hand was compelling me to delve deeper, to dig into the treasure trove of financial documents. That was when I stumbled upon the first set of files that sent my heart racing. There was a ledger that looked so ordinary at first glance, but as I opened it, the numbers blurred together and I could barely breathe. My mind raced as I cross-referenced the figures with a folder full of recent sales reports. Something wasn't right. The numbers in my hands painted an entirely different picture. "No, this can't be real," I whispered, my voice almost a ghost against the stark silence of the office. The disparity between what my uncle had claimed about our sales and what the ledger indicated was staggering. Our business had been struggling, but my uncle had assured me that we were just facing a temporary downturn. "A few rough months, Mia," he had said with confidence. "Nothing we can't handle." But now, armed with this newfound knowledge, I could see just how deeply he had manipulated the truth. Instead of a few rough months, It seemed like he had been siphoning away profits for what felt like an eternity. The heartbreak was overwhelming, the betrayal choking me with its intensity. How could he do this? My thoughts reeled as the walls of my small office closed in around me, graffiti-ed with the desolate future I now envisioned for my family. After what felt like hours of grappling with the reality of the situation, I finally mustered the courage to confront him. My fingers trembled as I picked up my phone, the screen glowed ominously in the dim light. Each painful ring echoed my despair until finally, I heard his voice, casual and full of the confidence he'd always exuded. "Mia, what is it? Is everything okay?" The concern in his tone only made the anger boil in me more fiercely. "No, it is not okay," I heard myself shout, the words bursting forth like a dam breaking. "You have been lying to me. I know about the money." The words hung thick in the air, and I could almost see the momentary confusion flicker in his eyes before the typical smugness returned. "Oh, come now, Mia. Everything is fine. There is no need to get all worked up. You're just being dramatic," he replied, laughter bubbling up from his chest as if I had told a joke rather than revealed a betrayal. It was infuriating. "Dramatic? You are robbing us blind. I just found the financial documents. You're manipulating the numbers. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Did you think I would remain blind to your deceit? This business is not thriving, Uncle. You've made it look good while you pocket the profits." The anger seeped through every word, and I felt the heat rushing to my face as his laughter faded. "Oh, sweet Mia," he replied, a patronizing tone creeping into his voice. "Do you really think you understand business? You're just a naive girl playing adult. I have been doing this for years. You should be thankful for what I've done to keep this place running, not accusatory. I kept the company alive while you sat there daydreaming." The dismissive nature of his words sliced through my heart as fresh waves of fury erupted inside me. "How can you say that? You are betraying the family. You've squandered my trust. I thought I could rely on you, Uncle. You were like a second father to me. How can you turn your back on all of that?" I asked, my voice rising uncontrollably, the desperation pleading for a sliver of understanding. "Trust? You think trust and family matter in business? You're too weak for this world, Mia. You have no idea what it takes to make it out here. You should be thanking me for my ability to manage this place." He leaned back in the chair, crossing his arms as if he were explaining simple math to a child rather than defending his actions to me. "No, you are not managing anything. You are stealing. You are stealing from me, from my family, from everything we built together. Do you even think of anyone but yourself? Do you care about what happens next? I'm drowning in debt. Our family is struggling, and you make it worse." My throat felt raw as the words escaped. A whirlwind of emotions crashed over me, disappointment mingling viciously with rage, the feeling of being trapped blurring my perspective. Drowning in debt. "Mia, please," he scoffed, waving dismissively as though my struggles were mere flies buzzing about his head. "Business is hard. You're just going to have to toughen up. If you can't handle this world, then maybe you have no place in it. You need to learn that the strong survive, not the weak." I felt as if I had been physically struck. My fists clenched at my sides, and for a moment, I couldn't even move. I felt hollow, as if this man I had trusted had not just robbed me of money, but of years of familial bonds. "How can you be so callous?" I asked, my voice low, the betrayal coursing through me like ice water. "You taught me that family comes first, that loyalty matters. But now," I trailed off, unable to complete that thought without breaking into tears. His response was cold, dismissive, yet filled with self-righteousness. "Life isn't fair, kid. Get used to it. There are winners and losers. I'm a winner, and you need to learn to be one too." The words dripped with disdain, and it felt like he'd thrust a knife deep into my heart, twisting it for good measure. Suddenly, I felt the walls of the office closing in on me, suffocating me with his words. Who was this man? How had I failed to see this darker side? The betrayal was a bitter pill to swallow, and I suddenly felt a fierce desire for vengeance swelling inside me. I refused to let his words define me. I needed to find a way to fight back, to expose his lies, to reclaim my future, to honor my family name. "Maybe you think you are winning now," I said, my voice steadying, "but the day of reckoning is coming, Uncle. I will not allow you to get away with this. What you have done is a crime, and you will pay for it." Each word burned like fire on my tongue, and the conviction behind my statements ignited a fire within me that I had thought long extinguished. His laughter rang out again, mockingly cruel. "Oh, Mia, you really are naive. You believe you can take me down. You think you can outsmart me. If you even try, do you know what you risk losing? Maybe everything you think you have." His threat lingered in the air, the condescending smile on his lips chilling me more than the words themselves. "I don't care. This is bigger than money or business. It's about trust. It's about family." I shouted, my words echoing off the grimy walls, ringing through the silence afterward. The weight of my emotions, the fury and the betrayal crashed over me again, and I felt my resolve hardening. You may have stolen from me now, but I will fight back. You will regret this. I turned away sharply, leaving behind the comfortable familiarity of the office that had been a sanctuary turned battleground. Every step felt fueled by a new purpose, determination simmering in my veins. As I reached the door, I realized he was right behind me, his presence a dark shadow. I glanced back, locking eyes with him, a silent promise passing between us. The battle lines had been drawn. "We will see about that, Mia," he said, his voice low, almost sinister like a predator preparing to strike. The last glimpse of his face as I stepped out into the cold night sent my heart racing. It was an arresting moment, one where I was no longer the weak girl clinging to the idea of family. I was now a woman ready to face everything he had taken from me, prepared to take back what was mine. I felt like I was standing at the edge of a cliff with the abyss yawned before me. The decision to leap into the unknown had been made. No matter what it took, I would bring justice to this betrayal. This was merely the beginning of my descent into the path of revenge. Everything reached a boiling point when I started receiving angry calls from vendors and creditors demanding payment. My phone buzzed incessantly on the barren kitchen table, a barrage of ringing that felt like a relentless storm battering against the fragile windows of reason. "Mia, this is Joe from Anderson Supplies. We need that payment today. Your balance is overdue by a month. I don't understand why you keep putting this off." His voice was a sharp dart piercing through my already frayed nerves. I swallowed hard, trying to gather some semblance of confidence in the midst of this pressure cooker. Each call was like a scream trapped beneath the surface. I could imagine Joe pacing back and forth on the other end of the line, hair disheveled, his hands tugging at his shirt as if to shake the frustration out of him. "I can assure you, Joe, I'm working on it," I said, my own voice sounding weak and unconvincing, even to my own ears. I was cut off by his impatient sigh. "Work on it? When? You know our policy on late payments. If we do not receive what is owed today, there will be penalties," he snapped, and I could practically hear the tapping of his pen against the paper, adding my name to a list of disgruntled clients. I barely managed to reply with a hollow, "I understand," before he hung up, and the silence that followed pressed heavily against my chest. With shaky hands, I dropped the phone onto the table, its screen reflecting a face lined with exhaustion and worry. My heart raced as I turned to look at the small pile of unopened bills that loomed like a mountain. Each envelope was a reminder of the spiraling debt that threatened to pull me under. I exchanged desperate glances with the empty chairs around the table, where once my family gathered for meals, laughter weaving through the air like sweet music. Now, each meal was swallowed in silence, an unspoken tension thrumming beneath the surface. In a desperate attempt to stay afloat, I borrowed money from my mother. It felt like giving a piece of my dignity away with every spoken word as I approached her with rehearsed lines, as if I was delivering a eulogy for my pride. "Mom, I really need your help," I said, trying to choke back the embarrassment that threatened to erupt. "I need to pay some bills, it's bad." "Oh, Mia," she replied, her brow furrowed in concern as she looked up from her knitting, the soft click and clack of her needles suddenly feeling tragic. "How did it come to this?" Her voice was laced with disappointment, but more than that, it was soaked in worry. I couldn't bear to look at her as I felt the heat of shame creeping up my cheeks. "I can explain. It's okay, I trust you." She nodded solemnly, handing me the money without another word. Her usually warm eyes now held a sheen of unshed tears as I stuffed the cash into my pocket like it was a Band-Aid for a gaping wound. I knew I was putting her in a tough position, risking her little savings just to keep me afloat. But when I faced my uncle, the indifference he displayed added another layer of poison to my already aching heart. It was as if my struggles were entertainment for him, a twisted show for his own amusement. One evening, I watched him celebrate with friends at a lavish party, his laughter booming through the walls as I stood just beyond their intoxicated cheers, the clinking of glasses a dissonant melody in my ears. They raised their glasses full of expensive champagne, bright golden bubbles swirling like glitter, while my family sat in silence, burdened with uncertainty. "Oh, there she is, the little architect of disaster," my uncle shouted, lifting his glass toward me with a mocking grin. The room erupted in laughter as if my pain was a punchline, and I felt a tightness in my chest. It was both rage and a terrifying sense of helplessness. I stood frozen, unnoticed by all but the shadows lurking at the edges of the party decor, feeling as though I was encased in glass. I could see the world outside, but was painfully separated from it. "Why don't you join us, Mia? We can toast to your clever financial decisions," he continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm, his friends joining in, their snickers echoing against the walls. All I wanted was to burst into their revelry and scream that I hadn't asked to be placed in this position. I hadn't asked for my life to crumble. I pulled my phone out, contemplating whether to capture this moment of betrayal, of mockery, but then tucked it back into my pocket. They would probably find humor in that too, the dusty edges of my struggles turned into something so easily mocked. "Let it go, Mia," I whispered to myself, though my heart thundered at the injustice. I turned and walked away, the tears streaming down my cheeks, feeling like a release, a relief, but also a raging fire igniting somewhere deep within my soul. The chill of the evening air mixed with the heat of my anger. It felt electric, like a storm ready to break open the sky. Once I got home, the silence hit like a blanket, and even the shadows seemed to slink away from me. I collapsed onto the couch, the cushions swallowing me whole as I hugged my knees. Thoughts whirled through my mind like a tornado. Flashes of my uncle's laughter rang in my ears, mixed with the nagging voices of the creditors, and the worry in my mother's eyes felt like chains around my ankles. But then, as I cried, that anger morphed. Like embers catching a breeze, it ignited into a fire within me, spreading through my veins, warming my heart with purpose. I clenched my fists, feeling the determination bubbling up alongside the pain. I needed to fight back. My family name was on the line, and I could not let him destroy everything I had worked for, everything my family depended on. I straightened my back, letting the tears dry on my face as I started to plan my revenge. I could visualize a strategy forming, a way to turn the tides. I could bring attention to all the backhanded dealings that my uncle had orchestrated behind the closed doors of family gatherings. What if I turned his jokes into conversations? I pondered, an idea brewing. What if I turned his indifference against him? Each scheme sparkled with a reckless potential, like crystalline fragments catching the light. I never imagined I could feel this invigorated, this alive, just from yearning for a chance to reclaim what was mine. Suddenly, I felt the weight of those calls, those bills, spinning into something bigger, something that turned the gears in my mind. I pictured my uncle stumbling over his own arrogance. The thought of him finally caught in the web he spun ignited a rush of adrenaline. I would do this with sophistication, like a chess master luring his opponent into a trap. I would gather evidence, expose him as the charlatan he was, steal his laughter, and twist it into nothing more than bitter irony. The sting of those lavish parties would become a laugh track in the backdrop of my victory. After hours of strategizing, I resolved that it all began with an intricate plan to gather information. I scribbled down ideas and possibilities onto a notepad, the ink smudging as I wrote faster with each passing second. I would not become a casualty in this deadly game, I would emerge victorious. "I will not be the punchline anymore," I murmured fiercely, the sound of my voice giving me goosebumps. It was then that I knew I was ready. The rebellion had sparked within me, and soon it would erupt into a fiery whirlwind of revenge. Filling the pages with every detail of my revenge, I felt alive again. Gone were the days of suffocating silence, the weight of my family's struggles. Now it was time to write my own story, one where I overtook the enemy, the very man who tried to step on my dreams. This was my moment, and the world had no idea what was coming for it. I gathered every ounce of courage, each word on the page fueling the fire, and I decided that it was time for my revenge. I had spent months orchestrating every detail of my plan, but the day had finally arrived that would determine the fate of everything I had fought for. The office was cold and sterile, the scent of fresh coffee mingling with a hint of anxiety radiating from my own fingertips. I stood in front of the investors, my heart racing like a drum. Today was not just another day, it was a reckoning. The long months of meticulous documentation and sleepless nights were about to come to fruition, and I could almost taste the victory that lingered just beyond my reach. "Thank you all for being here today," I said, my voice steady despite the storms of emotion swirling inside me. The investors, a mix of seasoned professionals and eager newcomers, each of whom had entrusted their hard-earned money to my uncle, sat around the conference table. They shuffled their papers, eyeing me with a mixture of curiosity and impatience. I took a deep breath, grounding myself as I glanced discreetly at my laptop, the lifeblood of my plan, now open to reveal an ocean of damning evidence. I understand that my uncle has earned your trust over the years, I began, my words slicing through the air with a purpose. But I'm afraid that trust has been built on lies. The room grew still, the atmosphere tinged with uncertainty. I could see them shifting in their seats, the unease palpable as I clicked through my meticulously prepared slides. Each slide I revealed provided more detail. Bank statements showing irregularities that twisted my uncle's financial picture into something grotesque, documents with forged signatures that had once felt like a stab in the gut. I had painstakingly pieced everything together, and now it was like I was unraveling a dark tapestry that had long been stifling the light. Here you can see the discrepancies in the profit statements, I continued, my eyes scanning their faces. This is where he inflated figures to impress you all. He has made it appear that the company is thriving when, in reality, the numbers reflect a desperate scramble to maintain an image. A murmur rippled through the investors, their brows furrowing as they leaned in closer to examine the evidence I had so carefully arranged. Is this really true? One of the older investors finally asked, his voice shaky. The trust he placed in my uncle for so many years was clearly cracking. Yes, I responded firmly, feeling a surge of adrenaline course through me. I have spoken to several other investors who are feeling misled just like you, but the core of it lies right here. I clicked to another slide, revealing scans of contracts that had been tampered with. This document, for instance, has been altered to hide losses. Once I found the original, the truth became evident. I could see the atmosphere shifting. They were no longer just listening, they were processing, realizing that their financial security had been woven into a web of deceit. I felt a strange mix of triumph and trepidation. I had expected this, but witnessing it in real time sent shivers down my spine. Is there any way this could be just a misunderstanding? One younger investor chimed in, his voice hesitant. Maybe he made mistakes. I shook my head, wishing I could appear more sympathetic, but the time for compassion had passed. Believe me, it is far beyond simple mistakes. These are calculated moves, driven by greed and a desire to maintain control over a facade. I watched their expressions harden as the reality settled in. Why are you doing this? Another investor asked, his eyes narrowed with suspicion. What do you gain from turning against your own family? I steeled myself, the truth weighing heavily on my shoulders, but my resolve fortified my voice. Because I couldn't stand by and watch him destroy lives, including my own. I lost everything to his schemes, and for far too long I felt powerless. I could see their demeanor shifting again as anger sparked among them, mingling with betrayal. I pressed on, flipping to the next slide that showcased photos of luxurious vacations my uncle had taken, the cars, the lavish parties, all funded by their investments and cloaked in lies. While he enjoyed his lavish vacations, you were all footing the bill with your trust. I want you to know the truth. An atmosphere of tension enveloped the room, like electric static. They whispered among themselves, the reality slowly dawning on them, and I felt a flood of satisfaction wash over me. The weight of those sleepless nights, the endless hours of worry, the haunted glances I had cast at my uncle over family dinners, all of it had been for this moment, this reckoning. One of the investors, a woman with striking silver hair and fierce eyes, broke the silence. How did you find this out? She demanded, almost as if my invasion of her trust offended her. I dug into records, reached out to former employees, and even connected with other investors who began to notice inconsistencies, I replied, my voice clear. It wasn't easy, but someone had to speak out. I couldn't allow him to keep ruining lives, including his own family. A younger investor stood up, his face flushed with anger. You should be ashamed of yourself. This will ruin a good man? I fought against the urge to roll my eyes. A good man wouldn't have betrayed the trust of his family and friends. A good man wouldn't be hiding behind forged documents and inflated profits. Would you rather be taken in by his lies? The tension soared, and I could feel the pulse of the room quickening. The older investors had absorbed enough to wake up from the delusion. I pressed the last slide that displayed an article draft I had prepared for journalists. This is just the beginning. I have reached out to local publications, and once they have all the evidence, it won't just be investors you have to be concerned about. He will be facing legal repercussions. Dread seeped into the air like a slow poison. Their eyes widened, panic entwined in their brows. But you wouldn't take it that far, would you? One asked, desperation edging his tone. Oh, I already have. I couldn't let this continue, not while even one investor remained unaware of the truth, I replied, my heart racing. This was not just a fight for justice. It was a fight for my own sanity, for closure on the pain he had caused my family. The realization sunk in further. I could see the guilt wash over them as they reevaluated their loyalty to a man who had taken advantage of their trust in the worst possible way. The murmurs amplified into full conversations as they discussed their next steps, their voices choppy with urgency. I stood still, my heart pounding, but I felt an unfamiliar calm settling around me. I had taken back control. Each second that passed felt charged with the weight of what I had done. The forbidden sweetness of exposing the truth enveloped me like a warm embrace. Then the door swung open, and a journalist I had called in earlier walked in, her camera slung over her shoulder and a notepad crammed with information. She gave a tight nod, recognizing the gravity of the situation. "I'm here for the meeting. Is this a good time?" Tension slipped through the air as the investors stared between me and the journalist. "This is not right," one of them shouted. "We can handle this ourselves." But I could feel the tide turning. Their folly of blind trust crashed against the jagged rocks of reality. "No," I said firmly. "This is his doing, and now everyone needs to understand the truth about it." The journalists had their role, and now people would know the impact of my uncle's deception. I had brought them here because I knew they would dig deeper and reveal the truths my uncle had hidden with lies for so long. As the investors took in the shifting realities, I could see Bertram's empire collapsing in front of me, like a house of cards toppled with one merciless gesture. "Let me assure you," the journalist said, jotting down notes for her publication. "What I am collecting here could shake the foundations of more than just their trust. It could dismantle the entire structure of his operations." The door closed on the hesitant trust my uncle had built, and I felt a sense of empowerment that I had never experienced before. Each heartbeat echoed within the walls of that room, amplifying the reality of my actions. I had crossed a point of no return, and I embraced every ounce of satisfaction that coursed through my veins. The investors were arguing now, their voices rising with confusion, anger, and fear. I could no longer distinguish their words, but I could feel the strength of my resolve bubbling to the surface. Justice was not just a dream anymore. It had become an unwavering fire within me, blazing a path through the smoke and mirrors my uncle had hidden behind for far too long. As I stood there, the moment crystallized in my memory. A tapestry of strength interwoven with pain, anger, and hope, unshackling the ties that had bound me. I was no longer just a victim of deceit. Today, I was the catalyst for change, standing tall with my heart racing, ready to unveil the truths that would break the chains of loyalty to a false prophet. The battle was not over, but I had stepped onto the battlefield, and nothing could hold me back. Now watching my uncle's fall from grace was a bittersweet symphony. The scene unfolded in agonizing slow motion, as if the universe had decided to pause just for me. It was hard to believe that the trusting man I had known my whole life could drown so thoroughly in his own greed. When the news broke, I felt a mix of satisfaction and sorrow, a collision of emotions that left me reeling. The cameras buzzed with excitement as his name flashed across the news ticker, his once cherished reputation dragging through mud as thick as syrup. "Breaking news," they declared. The words felt like a heavy weight on my shoulders. I couldn't help but feel a twisted sense of justice. I remember sitting with my parents in our living room, faces lit by the flickering blue light of the television, hands clenching the fabric of the couch as if it could tether us to something solid. The anchor spoke briskly. "Anderson Enterprises has declared bankruptcy after allegations of fraud." My mother gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. I could see her mind racing, piecing together everything we had worked for, everything that had once been intertwined with my uncle's success. My father, usually stoic, muttered under his breath, "This is absurd." I turned to him, wanting to understand, needing to understand the depth of this disaster. But there was nothing he could say that would fix it, nothing that could erase the betrayal that had stained our family name. Watching my uncle fall apart was surreal, like witnessing a phoenix trying to rise from ashes, but instead, falling deeper with each flap of its wings. I had always looked up to him. He had been my mentor, my guiding star in the turbulent seas of entrepreneurship. And now, he was reduced to whispers and pitying glances. I could still remember the way he had once stood in front of me, brimming with confidence, his tailored suit sharp against the backdrop of our humble town. "Success isn't just about money, Mia," he had said one day, a twinkle in his eye. "It's about loyalty, integrity." Those words replayed in my mind, stuck on repeat like a broken record. Ironically, my uncle seemed to have lost sight of those very principles. I could not ignore the fact that he had always flaunted his wealth as if it was a badge of honor. It was the sports cars, the glamorous parties, the way he would toss money around like confetti, but I never imagined it would end like this. Watching him crumble, step by step, was chilling. Investors, once so eager to partner with him, backed out as swiftly as running water down a drain. I witnessed the cascade of his losses from stocks plunging to his offices deserted, his name stripped from the glass doors like it was never there to begin with. The humiliation written across his face cut deep, and I found I could feel a strange mix of satisfaction and sorrow. Justice has its way of working out. A voice beside me whispered one morning when the news had settled in like a heavy fog. It was my brother, his eyes scanning the news feeds, no doubt trying to process everything. I remained silent, my thoughts swirling like a tempest.